Hello, and welcome back to One Idea Away. Today, I want to talk about Friedrich Nietzsche. Not in a super abstract academic way and not in the quote on a poster way either, but in the way that his ideas actually apply to how people live today. Nietzsche was focused on one central problem. Most people don't consciously decide how to live. They inherit it. They inherit their goals, they inherit their values, they inherit their definitions of success, and then they spend their lives optimizing for a framework that they never even chose. And that idea kind of sounds obvious at first, but it's kind of uncomfortable when you think about it because you can be productive, you can be disciplined, you can be successful on paper and still be operating on momentum instead of intention. That's something I've caught myself doing recently, honestly. You're busy, you're working towards something, but you haven't really stopped to ask why that thing or whether it really matters to you beyond expectations. Nietzsche had a word for this kind of existence. He thought that most people lived secondhand. Not fake, not lazy, but inherited. That idea ties into his most famous line, God is dead. And what's interesting is that he didn't mean it as a celebration or a provocation. He meant it as a warning. The old systems that used to give people meaning, religion, tradition, moral authority, were losing power. But instead of replacing them with something deliberate, people just kept the structure and dropped the meaning. So you still have pressure, you still have expectations, you still have standards, but you don't really know why you're following them. Nietzsche thought that this led to something worse than chaos. It led to emptiness. He describes a figure called the last man. The last man isn't unhappy in an obvious way. He's comfortable, he avoids risk, he chooses safety and convenience whenever possible. He doesn't want things to be hard. And that's what scared Nietzsche, not suffering, but the slow replacement of depth with comfort. Because that kind of life doesn't feel like giving up. It feels reasonable, it feels responsible, it feels like what you're supposed to do to avoid a bad life. But Nietzsche's alternative wasn't motivation or positivity, it was responsibility for this. He believed that if you're capable of thinking for yourself, then you're responsible for creating your own values. No system can do that for you. At some point, you have to decide what person you want to become and accept the cost that comes with that decision. And that's where his idea of the overman comes in. Not someone better than other people, but someone who refuses to live passively. Someone who treats their own life as something that needs to be shaped, not just managed. And this is where Nietzsche starts to feel almost practical in a sense. He talks about will to power, which is often misunderstood as being dominant or having a big ego, but what he meant was self-overcoming, the drive to grow through resistance instead of avoiding it, the impulse to choose challenge when comfort would be easier. That shows up in small, unglamorous ways in everyday life, like doing the work when it's uncomfortable, thinking independently when it would be easier to copy what's accepted, and choosing the long-term version of yourself over the short-term version. Nietzsche didn't think that life was about happiness. He thought it was about becoming capable of more. One idea phase that really clarified this for me is amor fati, love your fate. Not tolerate it, not accept it, love it. Every setback, every frustration, every moment that doesn't go according to plan. Nietzsche believed that those moments weren't interruptions to your life, they were the raw material. And the difference between people who grow and people who stagnate is whether they use that material or resent it. That perspective changes how you can interpret difficulty. So instead of seeing resistance as a sign that you should stop, you start seeing it as a sign that you're really engaged in something that matters. And then there's the thought experiment of his that sort of ties all of these ideas together, the eternal recurrence. Imagine you had to live your exact life over and over again forever. Same choices, same habits, same routines. Would you be okay with that? And that question isn't really meant to scare you. It's meant to make things concrete. It forces you to look at how you're actually living, not how you plan to live later, and ask whether you'd stand behind it if nothing magically changed. For me, that idea reframes a lot. It makes drifting feel more dangerous than failing. It makes half commitment feel heavier, and it puts pressure on the present instead of what I could be in the future. Nietzsche doesn't offer comfort, he offers clarity. He doesn't promise happiness. He promises a life you can respect, a life where you're choosing who you're becoming instead of letting inertia decide for you. And that's why Nietzsche still matters, because he refuses to let you live unconsciously. He assumes you're capable of more and then leaves it up to you to prove him right. And sometimes that shift alone leads to an answer that works best for you. Thank you for listening to One Idea Away.